All right, so today we're diving deep into blue ocean shift. It's all about, well, creating new markets instead of just slugging it out in ones that already exist.
Yeah, finding those spaces where you're not just another fish in the sea.
Right, and you sent over this awesome one-hour guide from Stellenbosch Graduate Institute that basically summarizes the book. I figure we can help you and our listeners, of course, kind of get the core ideas.
Absolutely, and the guide is great. It really gets to the heart of what the book's about without, getting bogged down in every little detail. Like one of the first things it hits on is value innovation. So it's not about being the cheapest option out there or even just the best, but offering something that's so unique, it creates a whole new category of demand.
Okay, so instead of being another pizza place on a block with five others, you're inventing some crazy new food that people haven't even thought of yet.
Exactly. And the book actually uses Cirque du Soleil as an example. They completely flip the script on what a circus could be. No animals, right? But insane artistry and theatrics. So they tapped into this whole new audience who might not have ever gone to a traditional
I
circus.
mean, that's classic blue ocean thinking.
It really is.
So how do we find these blue oceans then? The guide talks about a six paths framework for breaking free from that traditional industry thinking.
It's a great framework. And one of the paths that I always find really interesting is look across alternative industries. So you're looking at how needs are being met, but in totally different fields. Then you try to see if there are any parallels you can draw back to your own industry.
Like you're not just looking at your direct competitors, you might be looking at something completely different.
Exactly. The book uses the example of NetJets, private air travel. And instead of trying to just compete with the airlines or the companies making the jets, they actually looked at the fractional ownership model that people were using for vacation homes.
So instead of buying a whole jet, which, let's face it, most people can't afford, you buy a share in one, right? Makes private travel more accessible.
Exactly. They borrowed that concept from a completely different world, and boom, they created a blue ocean of their own.
So it's about, really thinking outside the box.
That's what it's all about.
This is really making me rethink how we even define an industry to begin with. But the guide is also really clear. The blue ocean shift isn't just about frameworks and tools.
Right.
It's also about the mindset of, well, a blue ocean strategist, which sounds kind of intimidating.
Not really. It's actually about being comfortable with some uncertainty. You're not going to have all the answers right away. You're okay with not knowing everything.
So it's like blue ocean thinkers are okay with a little bit of chaos.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've got to have that confidence to challenge the way things are normally done and to explore new areas.
So basically you're saying they're comfortable with maybe, failing a few times along the way.
As long as they learn from it.
Yeah, exactly. And I make confidence is important too.
Yeah.
You have to have a gut feeling that this wild new idea could actually work.
Oh, for sure. You need that conviction to keep pushing forward, even when, other people might doubt you.
I get that.
And this also ties into something else the guide highlights, which is that human element. Empathy, really understanding what customers need, on a deeper level, that's just as important as having all the strategic tools.
I was like you're connecting with people, not
Yep.
just treating them like numbers on a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the mindset, but the guide also talks a lot about practical stuff, like how to actually implement these ideas.
Yeah, you got to take action.
So it's one thing to, dream about blue oceans, but creating one, that's a whole other beast.
It is, but the guide lays out a pretty clear roadmap. It talks about choosing where to focus your energy.
Like, where do you even begin?
Where do you begin? Yeah, and it gets into this buyer utility map,
Yeah.
which helps you really understand what customers are getting or maybe not getting from the solutions that are already out there.
So it's like mapping out their whole experience,
Mhm.
figuring out where the gaps are.
Exactly. And once you've got a handle on that, then it's about building the right team. I mean, you can't do this alone, right?
Yeah, you need a crew.
You need people with different skills, different perspectives, but just as important, everyone needs to believe in what you're trying to do. People who are excited about creating something new.
That shared passion, that's key.
Yeah. So welcome back. We're diving deeper into Blue Ocean Shift, getting into the nitty-gritty of actually creating these new market spaces.
Yeah, I'm ready to get my hands dirty. Last time we were talking about finding blue oceans, and we touched on the six paths framework.
Right, right. That's one of the big tools the book gives us to kind of break free from those old ways of thinking about our industries.
Can we maybe dig into one more of those paths? I thought that example with NetJets, look across alternative industries was super interesting.
For sure, for sure. Let's talk about look across strategic groups. This one's all about, well, looking at the different groups within your industry. We often get so focused on competing within our little niche, but there might be a whole blue ocean waiting if we start to blur those lines a bit.
So, like, instead of just looking at my direct competitors, I should be looking at what's happening in other parts of the market.
Exactly. So think about a budget hotel chain, all right? They might assume their customers only care about price and, the bare minimum amenities. But what if they looked at what people value in a really high-end hotel?
Things like a cool design, maybe a more local feel, even personalized service.
Yeah, exactly. Some of those elements, you could totally bring them into a more budget-friendly offering, and suddenly you've got something totally new. This path really makes you question your assumptions about who your customer even is.
I like that. It's like a whole new way to see my industry.
Right.
Okay, so let's say we've used the framework. We've spotted a potential blue ocean. The guide really emphasizes testing our ideas, right? Like before going all in.
100%. Blue ocean shift is not about having some big epiphany and then, just betting the farm on it. It's about constantly testing, learning, and being willing to change course.
So we don't want to build the whole spaceship before we've even figured out if the model airplane can fly.
Haha, love that. It's about getting feedback early, way before you've sunk a ton of resources into something.
What kind of things should we be testing? And how do we even go about it?
The guide talks about rapid prototyping and pilot programs. You can test pieces of your offering, the pricing, how you're marketing it, even who your target customer is.
Okay, but how do we know if a test is even working? That seems pretty subjective.
You got to have clear goals. What are you trying to measure? Is it customer interest, sales, feedback? Define those things up front, then you can actually track your progress. It's all about using data to make decisions.
So, like, it's a constant back and forth, the blue ocean journey, not just a straight line.
More like navigating a winding river, for sure.
I like that analogy. But even with all the right tools and the right team, change is still tough. And the guide talks a lot about fair process.
Oh, yeah, that's super important.
What does that mean in terms of, blue ocean strategy?
It's making sure everyone involved feels heard. So your team, stakeholders, even people who might be affected by the changes you're making.
So transparency, making sure everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. When people feel like they're part of the decision-making, they're way more likely to support what you're doing, even if it's disruptive.
Change can be scary, especially in big companies. So this fair process seems like a good way to smooth things over.
It is. Explain the why, be honest about concerns, and it makes the whole transition easier. This blue ocean stuff, it challenges us to be strategic, creative, and good communicators all at the same time.
So we've covered a lot. The framework, testing, the human side of things.
We have. But there's one more big piece we haven't touched on yet.
Oh.
Non-customers.
Non-customers, huh? That sounds intriguing. Like a whole other world out there.
It is. That's where we're headed next.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into blue ocean shift. And we're tackling this whole idea of non-customers. I'm still not quite sure I get it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mind bender at first. So we've talked about, creating new demand, finding those uncontested spaces. But non-customers, these are the people who aren't even playing the game yet.
Like they're not even in the market we're thinking about, right?
Exactly. But that's the exciting part. They represent this massive untapped potential. It's like a hidden blue ocean just waiting to be found.
Okay, that's starting to make sense.
Yeah.
But how do we even find these non-customers? Like, where do we start looking?
Well, the guide breaks them down into 3 different tiers, almost like levels of potential, I guess you could
Yeah,
say.
tiers. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Like a layer cake or something.
Yeah, kind of. So the first tier, these are the soon-to-be non-customers. They're right on the edge of the market. They know about the existing solutions, but for whatever reason, they're not buying.
So they're like window shopping, but for a whole industry.
Yeah. Exactly. Maybe the current options are too pricey or too complicated or just don't quite fit what they need.
So if we can figure out what's holding them back, there's a real opportunity there. What about the second tier?
That's the refusing non-customers. These are the people who are actively avoiding your industry.
Ooh, tough crowd to win over.
It can be, but if we can dig into the reasons they're refusing, that can lead to some seriously innovative thinking.
You mean like understanding their objections could actually push us in a whole new direction?
Absolutely. And then there's the third tier, the unexplored non-customers. These are the people whose needs are so different from what the industry currently offers that, well, they're basically invisible.
They're like off the map entirely.
Pretty much. Tapping into this group, that requires some really outside-the-box thinking. You've got to look beyond the assumptions everyone else is making.
Okay, so 3 tiers, each with its own set of challenges.
Mm.
But how do we actually go about, like, understanding these non-customers,
Yeah.
getting inside their heads?
This is where good old market research comes in. But with a blue ocean spin, of course, we're not just asking them what they want, on the surface level. We're digging deeper, trying to find those unspoken needs, those pain points they might not even be aware of.
So we're not just looking at the data. We're really trying to empathize with their experience.
Exactly. And sometimes the best insights come from just observing people, watching how they actually behave, not just what they say in a survey or an interview.
So like ethnographic research, actually going out into the field and seeing how people live their lives, that could be really valuable here.
It could. You might discover all sorts of workarounds people are using, or maybe even totally different approaches that your industry hasn't even considered.
That's so cool. It's like being an explorer, charting a new continent. Okay, but let's say we've identified these non-customers, we understand their needs. How do we actually create something that's going to appeal to them, something that will pull them into the market?
Well, that's where value innovation comes in. We talked about it earlier. But
Yeah.
how does it work when you're dealing with people who aren't even customers yet?
Yeah, that seems like a whole other level of challenge.
It is, because you're not just improving on something that already exists, you're creating something totally new, something that directly addresses those unmet needs, those pain points we were talking about.
So it's about like creating value where there wasn't any before.
That's it. And it's not just about adding features or being flashy. It's about simplifying, focusing on what really matters to these non-customers.
You mean like making their lives easier or more enjoyable or more meaningful in some way?
Exactly. Think about Cirque du Soleil again. They didn't just appeal to existing circus goers. They created a whole new market by attracting people who never would have thought of themselves as circus fans.
People who maybe thought they hated clowns,
Mhm.
but were blown away by the artistry and the innovation.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what's so powerful about this whole blue ocean approach. You're not just fighting over a slice of the pie, you're making the pie bigger.
I love that analogy.
And this is not just for like huge corporations either. Anyone can use these ideas.
So if you're an entrepreneur or even just someone with a side hustle, there's a blue ocean out there waiting for you.
Absolutely. It all comes down to shifting your focus, right?
Yeah.
From competing in those crowded spaces to creating brand new ones.
And being willing to look beyond the obvious, to embrace the unknown.
Yeah, be curious, be brave, and don't be afraid to make a splash.
Well said. So that's it for our deep dive into Blue Ocean Shift. Hopefully this has given everyone some food for thought, some new ways to approach their businesses, or even just their lives.
I hope so.
Who knows? Maybe there's a blue ocean right under our noses just waiting to be discovered.
Happy exploring.